That's definitely broken glass back there, and that's gonna suck to clean up. My god, somehow no. Okay, yeah, shout out to this frame for not breaking. You have antiques on your wall. This weird happens like this sometimes. Now watch me drop it and break it right here. What the f do I do now? Okay, that's funny. Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday Heatwave Edition. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If 30-minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. Here we are, Vinyl Monday episode 101. And we are kicking off the next 100 with a bang. Welcome to the first heat wave of the year. If you've been kicking around here for long enough, you'll know that I can't run my AC and my turntable at the same time, let alone my AC and film. Yeah, it's gonna get gnarly in here pretty fast. This will be a 2-day filming job. This is also my first episode to be posted after the summer solstice. Happy astrological summer, everybody. With the season comes the obligatory bumping of the Southern Rock playlist. This week's group arguably invented the genre as we know it today. I meant to cover these guys last summer. Here they are now. This week's album is the Allman Brothers Band, Eat a Peach. Congrats if you guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post my hints to what next week's album is gonna be. I host polls where sometimes you get to pick what's on the show. I make announcements when I'm places that aren't here, like my podcast. You can find all of that on my channel. Alright, let's take the plastic off. Guys, I think my peach is bruised. So my copy is an original. I inherited this along with a pretty sizable batch of albums when I had just started collecting. After 100 episodes, that's kind of established Abigail DeVoe lore at this point. If it started with the Allman Brothers and ended somewhere around jazz blues fusion, you know this guy has taste. Gosh, it's days like these that make me wish some of my albums weren't quite so well loved because you are just not getting the full picture of the Eat a Peach art. It was by W. David Powell, who also designed for James Gang Straight Shooter. You can't see it, but I can feel it. It's this very cool embossed leather jacket. But he worked too hard on Eat a Peach for me to have to show it to you in this state. This copy has seen better days. If you've seen this jacket in real life, you know why this has just been calling out to me from my shelves for months. For one, the background. Here the sky looks a little smoggy, but as you'll see here in this lovely visual aid that I'm splicing in, the dull colors are supposed to be baby pink and blue. David made this out of white matte board and blue and pink spray paint. The artist, originally hailing from Florida, envisioned this as an early morning sky. However, I'm from New England and I've only ever seen these colors at sunset. The peach truck on the front cover and watermelon truck on the back were two vintage postcards that David found at a drugstore in Macon, Georgia. The text on the side of the truck was handwritten and collaged on. You may have noticed there is no title on the front or back, and that's because the guys just couldn't decide on one until the very end stages of production. There should be an insert with the title and track credits, but mine has been lost to the sands of time. Thankfully, time has not affected my gatefold. This wild illustration was a collab between David and J.F. Holmes. They met up in Florida and just started drawing until they came up with this. There's mountains, a river, a big bright sun, happy townspeople, lake monsters, the return of the peach truck boasting the artist's names, naked ladies riding dragons, and the foundation of a hippie's diet, mushrooms. My getup today is in inspired by the whimsy and intricacy of the art in the gatefold while trying to pull in some of the colors from the cover. The artists were inspired by a painter we've mentioned quite a few times on this channel, Hieronymus Bosch. This is a much more peaceful interpretation of Bosch. On Eat a Peach, we have our namesake brothers Allman, that's Skydog himself, Duane on lead and slide guitar, and Allman the Younger, Gregg on lead vocals, Hammond and Rhodes organs, with some acoustic guitar. Rounding out the rest of the band is Dickey on guitar and lead vocals on Blue Sky, Barry Oakley on bass, and 2 drummers. Butch Trucks on the kit and various percussion including the vibraphone, and John Lee Johnson, aka J. Johanny Johnson, aka Jaimo. The man had a lot of names. On the congas and the kit, our guest musicians are Tom Duchette on harmonica and Jim Stanty on tambourine. Eat a Peach was produced by Tom Dowd, mixed by Johnny Sandlin. Roll transition. Despite being on the road for years on end, chart success has evaded the Allman Brothers. They've released 2 studio albums by now, boasting genre-defining tunes like Whipping Post and Midnight Rider. On top of that, Duane spent the last summer in Miami, hanging with his new bestie, Eric Clapton. Producer Tom Dowd introduced them. They fanboyed over each other so hard they wound up in a band together. They recorded a whole album of Eric professing his love for his best friend's wife. But Layla initially underperformed, and the Allman Brothers' sales were just good. What really forged the band's reputation as great were their live performances. In 1970 alone, the Allman Brothers Band played around 300 shows. Word of mouth did its thing, and they earned the title of must-see act. Capricorn Records took advantage of this. Tom brought a mobile unit out to record a 2-night, 3-gig run at Bill Graham's legendary Fillmore East. The Allman Brothers previously opened for Blood, Sweat, and Tears and the Grateful Dead at the Fillmore East, and those gigs did a lot for them. Bill was more than happy to have the guys record there. They were one of his favorite bands. For gigs 1 and 2, the Allman Brothers reprised their role as world's best opening act, this time for Johnny Winter, but by gig number 3, they were so good they ascended to the top of the bill. These recordings produced their first live album at Fillmore East, released that July. It's a 76-minute behemoth with jams on In Memory of Elizabeth Reed and Whipping Post. Finally, this album did the trick. The Allman Brothers Band broke through, due in part to it being a double album, priced as a single. Following this win, Capricorn ordered a follow-up, which was to include more material from the Fillmore. Muddy Waters' Trouble No More came from gig 2, and a 30-something minute jam on Donovan's There Is a Mountain. Hence, Mountain Jam came from gig 3. The guys returned in June. The recording of Elmore James's One Way Out that we hear here was from that night. But the guys wouldn't make it into the studio until the fall. For one, they had to get back out on the road. They had to capitalize on this success to offset the cost of what would surely be a double LP. They were not giving up Mountain Jam. And secondly, drugs. Cocaine is a given, seeing as this is a rock band in the 1970s, but heroin has entered the fold and it's beating up the band pretty bad, especially Duane and Barry. The guys booked time at Criteria Studios in Miami to cut Stand Back, Blue Sky, and Little Martha, then peace out to squeeze some more gigs in. After another crazy run of tour dates, San Diego on October 1st, The Whiskey on the 2nd, dates in Washington, Texas, and back in California before hitting up the Winterland for the 8th and 9th. UCSB on the 10th, making it out to the Mid-Atlantic region a few days after that, Duane, Barry, and 2 roadies check themselves into rehab in upstate New York. Their last gig before the guys checked in, the Painters Mill Music Fair in Maryland on October 17th, would be their last with Duane Allman. On the 29th, just after leaving rehab and the band returning to Macon, Duane hopped on his motorcycle and headed to the band's HQ. It was only a short trip there and back. He was just going to wish Barry's wife a happy birthday. But on his way to the big house, Duane died in an accident at just 24 years old. He was going too fast. The truck stopped just too short, he swerved just too late. We'll talk more about what Duane meant to rock and roll in the coming chapters, but for now, let's just talk about what he meant to his band. He was the fire of the Allman Brothers. His relentless ambition inspired the guys. He was their leader, a natural leader his whole life. He was a truly free spirit, traveling wherever the wind took him in pursuit of the music. He found Jay in Macon, Georgia, Barry in Jacksonville, Florida, plucked Gregg from where he was in California. Duane would regularly rope his friends and bandmates into his crazy schemes. His guitar teacher, Jim Shepley, recalls pulling off a beer heist with Duane, where they made off with 20 cases of beer, not 26 packs, 20 cases. And after being on the road for essentially the past 4 years, the guys all had a very close bond, but no doubt the one who took his death the hardest was Gregg. They were really close in age, just over a year apart, so they moved through life a little bit more like twins than brothers. Suddenly, Gregg is the de facto leader of the band, and he has no idea where to go or what to do. The now 5-piece Allman Brothers band played a short set at Duane's memorial service, including Key to the Highway off Layla and a longtime favorite of his, Melissa. Music press at the time was really hung up on this idea that there could be no Allman Brothers band without the Allman Brothers, plural. The guys held a meeting after a few weeks, and the following quote from Butch Trucks encapsulates the tentative hope and resilience of the conclusion they came to. Quote, "We thought about quitting because how could we go on without Duane? But then we realized, how could we stop? Time stops for no one, and the Allman Brothers were now one of the biggest groups in the United States. It was everything Duane had been working tirelessly towards for years. Carrying on with the band was the guys honoring that dream and Duane's frankly insane work ethic. Not only did they start touring again, they headlined the freaking Carnegie Hall on Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, Gregg wrote to cope. "Ain't wasting time no more" is 23-year-old Gregg stating life is too fucking short not to take the bull by the horns, live, and get back to work. They had a record to put out, so the guys cut a final 3 songs at Criteria in December. The band recorded Gregg's Ain't Wasting Time No More and Melissa plus Dickey's Les Brer in A minor. The title of the latter was, I shit you not, Dickey's best guess at what Les Brothers would be in French. He was excruciatingly close. This was the phrase he was thinking of. The guys started recording Les Brer in the brand spanking new Studio C, but after hearing the playback of the beginning with Tom, the guys said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I like the old studio better." So they hauled all their tape and gear and shit back into old Studio A. I can only imagine how annoyed Tom was. That's why there's a very obvious cut in where the master tapes were spliced together and a slight pitch shift. As wonderful a producer as Tom was, it would have been virtually impossible to sync the tempo and pitch perfectly. Speaking of Tom, he is the only one credited for mixing this thing. However, because of the band's hiatus after Duane's passing, production on the album ran late. Tom had to leave this project to work with Okay, Wikipedia says that it's Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but that's literally impossible seeing as they broke up back in April of 71. The only release I can come up with from that year was Crosby and Nash, but Tom isn't credited on this. Here's a list of Tom Dowd stuff that did come out in 1972. The One Way Out book is literally wrong. Whatever album it was, Tom had to leave for that project, and the mix was completed by Johnny Sandlin. In the end stages of production, the question of an album title finally came up. The Kind We Grow in Dixie was briefly shopped around, but nobody was really crazy about it. Then Butch came across an interview of Duane's published in Good Times magazine that past spring. This whole thing is such an interesting read, and I learned so much. For one, they were planning on adding a horn section to the Allman Brothers, which would have been sick as hell, but mostly I got a sense for the artistry and the vision of Duane Allman. He talked about the death of music festivals and how the higher-ups didn't want the people uniting under music. They weren't ready for the revolution, man. If this interview is any indication, the man could talk. He goes on for a whole page on this alone. When asked how are you helping the aforementioned revolution, Duane responded with this, quote, "I'm hitting a lick for peace. And every time I'm in Georgia, I eat a peach for peace. But you can't help the revolution because there's just evolution." That last part of the quote is so oddly prophetic for how the rest of the 1970s and rock and roll would go, but the first half proved to be too perfect for this album art. The track listing of Eat a Peach goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have Ain't Wastin' Time No More, followed by Les Brer in A minor. And side 1 closes out with Melissa. Taking up all of side 2, we have Mountain Jam Part 1. Opening up disc 2, we have One Way Out, followed by Trouble No More. Then Stand Back. Next, Blue Sky, and closing side 3, we have Little Martha. Closing out the album, once again taking up all of side 4, is Mountain Jam Part 2. Eat a Peach was released in February of 1972, though looking at its chart history, it might have actually been released in March. It debuted at number 32 on the album charts the week of March 18th. Now, there was a lot going on in the previous chapter, so I kind of completely neglected to mention that through all of this, Capricorn Records is breaking up with their parent label, Atlantic. By some divine timing, advertising exec Dick Woolley is breaking up with Atlantic too. He jumped ship to Capricorn, and if not for his efforts, Eat a Peach might not have been the massive chart success it was. He received a promo copy of Eat a Peach, and as the story goes, loved it so much he halved his rates for the band. Dick not only landed the guys a blockbuster New Year's Eve show at the Warehouse in New Orleans, he also organized for the gig to be broadcast live amongst a handful of southern radio stations. Thousands of listeners tuned in, were converted to fans, and Eat a Peach peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 200. Tony Glover of Rolling Stone wrote a glowing review for the April 13th, 1972 issue. Keep this in mind going into the next chapter of the video. He doesn't review the album in order. He resequences it chronologically to make it the story of the old and new Allman Brothers bands. Starting with Mountain Jam and ending with Melissa. Tony's description of Les Brer, quote, Dickey says it's one of those lines that just came out of the air, but those who've heard it say it reminds them of something Greek, or Israeli, or Midnight in Moscow, or what the hell was that? Send cards, it's freaking me. Spoiler alert, the motif came from a bootleg of Whipping Post. If it wasn't already clear, Tony was a huge fan. From all of the loving descriptions he gives each song, he makes it clear in the closing lines. Quote, no, the group is not the same without Duane. but it's still the Allman Brothers. It's not a question of being as good or not as good, rather it's just a difference, an expansion in several directions, still too early to name. The Allman Brothers are still the best goddamn band in the land, and this record with 3 sides of old and 1 side of new is a simultaneous sorrowed ending and hopeful beginning. I hope this band keeps playing forever. As for channel favorite Robert Christgau, he gave side 3 love with special marks going to One Way Out. I did get a chuckle out of him describing Les Brer as, quote, an instrumental excursion that sounds like Dickey ODing on Live Dead. But his royal D-ness was thoroughly displeased by Mountain Jam. Quote, I know the pace of living is slow down there, but this verges on the comatose. And all the tape in the world isn't going to bring Duane back. In wake of Ida Peach's success, the Allman Brothers Band proved that the road truly does go on forever. They played 90 gigs in 1972. Light fare by Allman Brothers, or maybe Led Zeppelin standards, but a truly impossible feat by others. That summer, the Duane and Gregg Allman demos from back in '68 were cleaned up and released as an LP. But once again, the journey came to a halt. On November 11th, 1972, bassist Barry Oakley died as a result of injuries from a motorcycle crash at 24 years old. 2 founding members of this band passed at the same age as a result of a crash. Guys, please be careful with your bikes. Wear your fucking helmets. I know it looks dorky, but wear your gear, watch your speed, stay alert. For the love of God, don't drink. Because it's not a matter of if you lay your bike, it's a matter of when. Everybody does it at least once, and any number of the factors I've just listed could be the difference between life and death. And even though it may not always seem like it, I actually care about the well-being of you head-asses. Around the time of Barry's death, the Duane Allman Anthology was released. And something funny happened. Stop. How the hell do you make a Duane Allman retrospective without The Road of Love? I mean, come on! Remember when I said Layla was a commercial failure upon release? That's because they shaved the song down to a 2-minute and change runtime for the single. It's of my belief that single Layla flopped because you need both Duane's blistering solo and the Jim Gordon, let's be honest, Rita Coolidge coda to succeed. The emotional outburst is incredible and the come down is devastating. The Duane Allman Anthology and History of Eric Clapton compilation, oh Jesus Christ, this haircut is terrible, both featured the full 7-minute Layla. Both these comps got Layla into the hands of more fans, and finally, after almost 2 years of languishing in the cutout bins, as this copy of mine is proof of, the world finally heard Layla and experienced Duane's genius on it. Ida Peach is one of the Allman Brothers' best-selling albums, having produced 3 of their greatest hits, Ain't Wastin' Time No More, Melissa, and Blue Sky. It was certified platinum, meaning over the years it sold over 1 million copies. The opening lines of that Rolling Stone review of Ida Peach are as follows, quote, "The death of an artist always diminishes the music more than the death of a star. Duane Allman was an artist. He lived for and in music, loving it with the kind of possessed passion that sometimes leads people to believe that bluesmen have traded their souls to the devil for the magic of their music." Before moving on to the next chapter of the video, I want to put into perspective just how profoundly Duane's passing affected rock and roll, because I don't think many music fans my age understand this. Picture Jimi Hendrix, right? And the stature he had when he passed. Music fans my age have come to the conclusion by now that his death permanently altered the course of rock and roll. He slingshot guitar playing into the future, and it took years for other players to catch up. I turned 25 last week as of me filming this. It'll be about 2 weeks ago when I post it. So now I am older than Duane Allman ever got to be. By 24, he'd already played with everyone. He talks about jamming with Buddy Miles in that Peach interview. About one of Duane's session player gigs all the way back in the 60s, J.D. Wicker said, quote, Duane Allman knew that he could forever become immortal and unforgettable simply by playing his heart out. He began to play, or should I say burn, with an intensity that bordered on recklessness. He was a diligent student of his craft, always studying other people's records. His style would never have hit a stasis. He studied blues records, he studied jazz records, he studied kind of blue for 2 years, trying to mold what Miles Davis was doing into what he was doing with the guitar. Fillmore East was certified gold the summer of '71. Between this material, all of this massive untapped potential, and the impending Layla Renaissance, Duane was on the precipice of something huge. If he was this good, this young, there is no telling what he could have gone on to do. When he died, the progression of slide playing just kinda stopped. For a long time. There will never be another Duane Allman. In short, he died a guitar hero, but you need to understand he could have lived to become a god. I'm not even a fan like that, and I understand that much. That's right, going into this, I was only really familiar with the post-Duane radio hits. Ain't Wastin' Time No More, Ramblin' Man, so what do I think of Eat a Peach? One last thing before I get into this review. I want to acknowledge the superhuman act of fortitude it took to complete this record after Duane's passing. Grief can tear a band apart. See the other side of the Duane coin, Derek and the Dominoes. Grief brought these guys closer, but it's not easy to do that. Ain't Wastin' Time No More is the Allman Brothers I was familiar with, that brand of country rock that classic rock radio has latched onto. Piano-driven with some organ and humble language to express how fragile life is. Ain't Wastin' Time No More, 'cause time goes by like hurricanes running after subway trains. Sometimes Gregg's metaphors are a little hit you over the head. What's the fastest thing I can think of? Ain't Wastin' Time is the new Allman Brothers introducing themselves. Gregg's Allman Brothers Band. I can't help but notice how crunchy his vocals sound. It's almost like an old school blues treatment with how much he's clipping the mic. Dickey really gives it his all on slide. You gotta give it to the guy. He had some huge shoes to fill. Then came Le Brere in A minor. Guys, why aren't we talking about this? This song is fucking brilliant! When you think about it, it's no wonder it's beautiful. This is Dickey's goodbye to Duane, Le Brere, Les Brothers. My brother in music is gone. Secondly, this thing was recorded by Tom Dowd. The man knew how to record guitars, and the man knew how to record jazz. Atmosphere, dynamics, texture. For fuck's sake, this man recorded Train. Doing a jazzy thing is a fitting tribute for Duane. He was big into jazz and wanted to emulate what horn and saxophone players were doing with their solos. All my favorite jazz recordings have something I like to call a morning salutation. A Love Supreme has one. Coltrane's iconic opening flourish feels like waking up in the morning with the sun streaming in through your window. Le Brere has this opening crescendo lasting 3 minutes and spanning nearly 2 octaves. It uses dynamics and the gradual layering of instruments to build. It's a stop you in your tracks early morning sunrise. It's still chilly outside and nature is waking up before you do. The cymbals are the wind, the congas are the bugs, the organ and guitars color the sky from blue to yellow to orange. then this bright red with the screaming lead. It feels just like the blue and pink on the front cover. Gravity pushes it down from the heights and into this huge, expansive wash of noise that you have to hear on a stereo system to get the full effect of. I do not understand why the guys didn't like the fidelity of this. Then Le Braire bursts into like 6 minutes of killer melody and Latin, bass, conga, and keys driven Santana groove that's been stuck in my head for at least the past 3 to 5 business days. Before listening through Eat a Peach for this video, I had no idea the Allman Brothers had this side to them. Le Braire is a new favorite for sure. It is a next level achievement to write a song so beautiful that mothers name their daughters after it, and the Allman Brothers did it twice, with Jessica and Melissa. Gregg wrote Melissa around the Allman Brothers band's very infancy, if not a little before. They tried a couple times to record it, but it didn't really fit on any other album. Duane loved it, so as a tribute to his brother, Gregg put it on Eat a Peach. If you read the lyrics, Melissa isn't much about Melissa at all. It's about a man who never stays in one place for too long. No one knows his name, no one knows from whence he came. He hops on train cars to go wherever they're going. Knowing many, loving none, bearing sorrow, having fun. No one's really sure what he's running away from. Maybe he's running away from himself. Crossroads, will you ever let him go? Invokes imagery of bluesmen who go down to the crossroads and sell their souls for fame and fortune. Gregg wrote this about a man like himself, or maybe like his brother. But no matter where this guy runs to, he always comes back to Melissa. All the places he's been, he's never seen a woman as beautiful as Melissa. No one has brought him the peace that Melissa did. This line just drives a knife into my heart. There are no blankets where he lies. In all his deepest dreams, the gypsy flies with sweet Melissa. Even in the ephemeral beyond, wherever we go, after we're here, this man's soul won't be at peace unless he's with her. I will say the song is quite nice. The acoustic guitar is pretty, the piano-driven kind of stuff that I like. The arrangement is roomy to let the songwriting shine. Gregg's lyricism can be a little on the nose for me, but this is perfect. I hope wherever Duane and Gregg are right now in the cosmic ether, wherever we go after we're here, I hope they're together and making beautiful music like this. Now let's get to the pit of the peach, because in terms of sequencing, Eat a Peach was an impossible question, and that is because of the 30-something minute long Mountain Jam. Because of this behemoth, I have been racking my brain for days trying to decide how I'm gonna cover this record. In case you haven't heard, vinyl has surface area. You can cram about 25 minutes worth of music on one side of a record max. Mountain Jam's runtime is just about 34 minutes. So if you have Eat a Peach on vinyl, you get Mountain Jams 1 and 2. Not only did they split the song up, they stuck both halves on 2 different discs, which is just unhinged of them to do. If you have a CD or you stream Eat a Peach, the halves of Mountain Jam are reunited for like 20 years between vinyl's peak popularity and the rise of the CD. Unless you were at the Fillmore East the night of March 13th, 1971, or somehow had access to the masters, you could not hear this full Mountain Jam. But digital formats have Mountain Jam in full as track 4? After Melissa, before One Way Out. Do you understand how many layers there are to my dilemma this week? This is a show about the physical format, but I have to acknowledge that because of the limitations of this format, I do not have the fullest picture of this song. However, I have the fullest picture of how the album was originally intended. Tom Dowd, why would you do this to me personally? Mountain Jam 1 is the first 20-ish minutes this ending just after Butch and Jaimo's dueling drums. May I just say that between this and Gabor Szebo's Ferris wheel, Donovan has a pretty good track record for translating into instrumentals. The beginning has that same beautiful freeness as Les Brer, but with a bit more of a Grateful Dead twinge. Intricate woven guitars, sparse keys, jazzy frenetic drums. Each instrument is independent from the other, but they're so locked in that you don't even notice it takes a full 2 minutes for Barry to jump in. That's one thing you can't buy or fake as a band, and that's chemistry. Mountain moves organically, which you can do if you're seasoned and you know each other as players. There is a lot of trial and error on this thing, coming from the guys feeling safe around each other enough to fuck up. See Duane really trying to change the key about 3 minutes in, but the guys just won't take the bait. Sometimes you hit a dead end and have to turn around. Dickey does it like 4 times. My brother in Christ. 4 times in his solo. Gregg is doing some Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson which I did not expect. That being said, while I like jam-based stuff, I don't always like the jam. About the longest runtime of a jam I can stand is Do What You Like. Okay, we're safe. If not for the rhythm section, Mountain would get tedious fast for me. You have Butch in one ear, Jaimo in the other, and Barry somewhere in the middle, filling in each other's gaps for this lush, big, energetic rhythm beast thing. I have to give some love to a bass solo, Barry's first one, with this gorgeous chromatic noodling hidden amongst that bird call thing that Duane could do. Not every group can pull off an extended drum break. This one does get lost at times, but again, it's part of jamming. Jaimo could play so fast that people didn't know if he was a good player or a shit one. I sense he's the one really pushing and pulling the tempo through this duel. Someone stumbles and misses a beat at the 14-minute mark, but then they just roll with it. It's rare and special that 2 drummers get to hop on kits and interact this way on stage. Then disc 1 ends in the middle of Barry's solo? You couldn't have cut this thing off after the drums. Okay, moving on. We hop into something much more my live recording speed, One Way Out. This is one of my favorite things the Allman Brothers ever did. For one, the drums add so much flavor. They switch back and forth from harmonic to playing a straight rhythm. This is Gregg's shining moment as frontman. He sells this song, probably because he lived it once or twice. The man had woman problems. I have given so much love to Duane, but this is the solo that made me appreciate Dickey Betts. This thing just oozes charisma with a vibrato to rival Clapton's. It's my personal favorite solo on the record. Trouble No More is like the bread and butter of Eat a Peach. Simple, easy motif, pretty obvious places for a flourish here and a solo there. Great groove. Gregg's keys play both sides of rhythm and lead, and this is one of the sassiest licks I have heard since Still Raining, Still Dreaming. In case I haven't already laid it out, what set Duane apart? Phrasing, note choice, and control of tone. Slide can sound sickly and awful if you don't have solid control. It's not about volume, it's about touch. The title of our next song comes from this line. If I ever see that woman walking down the street, I'll just stand back and try to move away slowly. Clearly, Gregg could not heed his own advice. The man was married 7 times. He's the Henry VIII of rock and roll, just without all the dying, executing, and banishing and shit. Stand Back has a bossy, swaggering drive to it, a smoky saloon feel, a platform for Gregg's ladies' man shtick. Singing about getting burned by a chick you just can't quit is a song topic as old as the blues itself. Blue Sky was my old favorite off Eat a Peach before I unearthed One Way Out. Between this this and Les Brer, Dickey has some serious songwriting range. This is in line with the southern rock that one pictures the genre to be, whereas Les Brer is absolutely not, yet I really like both. Blue Sky is breezy and almost California carefree. The lyrics are just as cheery, about enjoying the simple things in life, like being guided by nature. Dickey and Duane reflect this. Their interplay is almost bird-like here. It's all about returning home to the one you love. You're my blue sky, you're my sunny day. There's even some steel guitar buried in there. I really thought that this would have been the B-side that later received A-side treatment like Melissa was. I know radio doesn't always play nice with extended instrumental breaks, but Blue Sky could have done well. Because of the Mountain Jam conundrum, Little Martha becomes the closer on new versions of Eat a Peach. This song is just not a closer and was never meant to be. According to Dickey, in the Rolling Stone review, quote, Duane and I always talked about doing part of the set acoustic, but somehow we just never got around to it. This is the most sonically intimate tune on the record. Just Dickey and Duane. It feels like we forgive the cliche, but we just walked onto the porch and they were already there, chilling with their acoustics. Playing a pretty motif in a sometimes classical manner, but still, it's very casual. Closing out my album is the back half-ish. It's about 15 minutes of Mountain Jam. Man, did Barry get the short end of the stick by having his bass solo split up. Just shifting that cut a minute or two ahead makes the solo sound a whole lot more grounded. He changes up the tempo and key a lot in a matter of minutes, and hold the fucking phone, did they sneak the May This Be Love motif in there? Mountain Jam as a whole suffers from this format, but it also doesn't. These super extendo jams, you really have to experience the moment live to feel the full power. I do get annoyed that there's like 4 endings to this song. They couldn't have just picked one and cut the others out of the tape, and then maybe the song would have fit on one side of the record. But we get a taste of the live feeling as the record closes, with Duane shouting out each player over thunderous applause. Remember in the beginning of this video when I said the Eat a Peach cover was meant to be the sky at dawn, but because of my geographic location, I always interpreted it as dusk? Eat a Peach is both sunrise and sunset. Not unlike the cycle of life and death, this album is a never-ending circle, a Mobius strip of the story of the Allman Brothers. It's the sunset of the Allman Brothers, the last blazing light of the Sky Dog, and the sun rising on the new Allman Brothers, with Gregg and Dickey at the helm. It's the peach. Sweet, but definitely a little rocky at the pit. These guys may not be blood brothers, but they're brothers in music, and that's pretty damn close. Music which Tom Dowd recorded beautifully. Whether you see it as sunrise or sunset, Eat a Peach is a never-ending story and an eternal bath of light. My personal favorites off this one are Les Brer in A minor, Melissa, One Way Out, and Blue Sky. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That's the Allman Brothers Band. That's Eat a Peach. What do you think of this album? What do you think of the Allman Brothers? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love, and remember, despite what some guy on the internet might tell you, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11, and a new episode of my podcast every other Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Time to go fix the hole in my wall.
Butch, Gregg, Allman.